as Mike said, my name's Sam. I'm obviously the treasurer for the committee, so the only reason I'm here is because Matt couldn't find anybody else to fill the slot, basically. So I started HerpHQ, which is just a Facebook page, probably about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, which started as a blog for a big build I had going on, and then I finished that, so I kind of morphed it into what became this, just to share my experiences, my knowledge. I'm not a business, I don't declare myself an expert in any way. It's just a platform for me to share what I love, share what I do. I'm a hobbyist at heart. I hope many of you are here as well. So, creating a slice of nature. I am going to go into how I create these structures, and you will see this one later, I promise. I know Matt's looking forward to it.
Can we do that bit first?
Nope. I will go into how I create them, the methods I use, but creating a slice of nature isn't just about making it look right. So we're going to go and first look at how I've researched the habitats, how I go about, how am I going to set it up, what substrates am I going to use, how am I going to plant it, etc., etc. And some of the main websites that I use for actually sort of gathering the information outside of talking to people on Facebook, which can be valuable, can not. I'm going to go into a little bit about the light and heat. I won't cover it too much because I know Ron did an extensive talk last month. We'll have a little look at microhabitats, how to create little niche areas within your live, because no one habitat is the same throughout those damp areas, etc. But we will come on to that. And I will also talk about the custom build methods, how I actually go about creating some of these, which is what I'm sure most of you are here for. So habitat research. There is a plethora of information out there online. There's a plethora of experience around the world on Facebook, in this room. There are people I can see here that I know have got loads and loads of knowledge. Speak to people. Talk to them. This is what's great about events like this. You can talk to people face to face. But there are resources online as well. This is one I use quite a lot, the ICUN Red List. It's called the Red List. It's slightly misleading. It actually has information on lots of species around the world. It doesn't have all the information on all the species, but it's a good starting point. Now this is actually a link, but I can't go to the site because I haven't got an internet connection. So this is a screenshot, which isn't that clear, but it's for a Tortoise dorsalis, which is my desert iguanas. You can see here there's actually a link to view map, and it will actually show you the distribution of that animal for exactly where it is in the world. That's a good starting point. You know where it's from, you can use that to then search further. Most species will also have some kind of description of the type of habitat that they inhabit. Sometimes the temperature ranges, the humidity ranges, sometimes not. It depends on how common the species is. So, believe it or not, they don't have one for a bearded dragon. I don't know why, but I don't have one of them. So, another site I use a lot is a site called iNaturalist. Now, iNaturalist is what I'd call a spotter's site. So, if somebody's actually gone herping or gone out on a trip somewhere, and they photograph the actual animal in situ, in the wild. They will post the picture on here, and I can't remember which icon it is, but you can get icons against the spots. And if you've got a verified icon against the spot, that has been verified by experts, that is that actual species and that is actually where it's been taken. So it's a pretty good source of information for actually trying to establish what the habitat looks like, where they come from. It does have a map feature as well, so you can actually see dots. So if you do a search for a species, you'll get the dots on the maps on exactly where these photographs have been taken. So from that, you can actually work out pretty well a good location. And then the old favourite, Google. Once you've got this information from the other sites, a quick search can bring up a plethora of images. Can't necessarily trust them all, but it'll give you a good indication of what the site will look like. There are other sites out there as well, but they're the ones that I use mainly. Now, a little test. Most of you know a chap called Ben Owens. Does trips around the world. Might give you a clue, he's just come back from a recent trip to India. He was kind enough to let me use this image and the next one. And I think you'd be quite surprised to know which lizard, there's a bit of a clue, actually inhabits. You can shut up because you know the answer. I give you a clue. It's from the Indian and Pakistan border. Anyone would like to hazard a guess? I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. You can shut up.
Got an answer. Leopard gecko.
Hang on. Who would imagine that a leopard gecko would come from a lush, mossy green environment like that? How many setups do you see, not including lino or tiles, or any type like that. But a naturalistic setup for a leopard gecko, how many of them are arid? How many of them contain stone? How many of them contain moss, plants, and stuff like that? Just a little bit of research. I mean, Ben posts his stuff on iNaturalist as well, so when he spots it, he's one of the spotters that are on there. So I mean, it just shows you how vastly different it can be from what you actually think it is, just from things like the Facebook forums, like, oh yeah, you must use sand, or don't use sand, or you must use lino tiles.
Sam, can I jump in? Is that, do we know the species of
I
that?
don't know the exact species, but it is one of the subspecies of leopard gecko. Ben has assured me. I can find, he told me exactly where I found it, I can dig out the message later and I can update, but, so yeah, it just shows you how different things can be. Right, light and heat. I'm not going to go into this too much, because obviously Rom did it last week. I'm not going to go into wavelengths. Rom did insist that I included it in my talk. We all know what Rom's like with heat. And he insisted I include his influence chart. So it just gives you an idea. This section here in the middle is the visible light. That's the light that we actually see through our eyes. That is the part that is nearly always missing from our setup. So we always have the UV. Most people have the UV. And most of us have sort of the lower infrared scale from the heat lamps, which produce infrared. If you use the full spectrum, what benefits can you actually expect? I mean, you will see an improvement in plant growth. If you've got the full spectrum, the plants need the visible light sector. That's why there are products like the Jungle Dawn, the New Dawn, the Sky See that I've got on here. They produce the right visible light to enable the plants to grow. If you've got the correct, now that is the key word, correct level of infrared radiation, which is stuff we cannot see, which is produced mostly from like tungsten, halogen lamps, etc., etc., you will get a better heat penetration actually deep into the skin of the animal. There's no point warming the skin of the reptile snake. It needs to deeply penetrate, and that's how they get their warmth. So that you'll get from the infrared side. Obviously, most people use UV already. I'm very much of the opinion that every single animal in captivity should have UV. The question is what level. So obviously there are species that are nocturnal, but they will cryptic bask in UV light during the day. So they will have their head out, their little hide or their tail or side of their body. So you might only have a 2% in that one, or anything up to like my desert iguanas, which are sun-loving animals, which has got a 14% dragon lamp in it, and they will quite happily sit a foot away from it all day on a 60-degree basket. So it's very much, an animal must have UV, just deciding what level, and you can only really gauge that from sort of talking to people and using some of the, there's sites out there that will tell you sort of the weather ranges and the UV ranges for most habitats. It's just a matter of finding it, and that's where your good friend Google comes in again. With all my setups, which we will see next, I've included LED lamps, which you'll see in this one. Just get them. They're just simple GU10 bulbs, like that. They produce next to no heat. They're 6 watt, cheap as chips to run, and they do them in a variety of colours. So I've always put in 6,000 and 4,000 Kelvin, which is the colour range of the light, which I will explain a bit more in a minute. Since I've put them into my setups, the activity level I've seen from my animals, especially the desert iguanas, which are sun lovers, has gone through the roof. I mean, they used to, before I introduced that, I had the right heat, I had the UV, I had no LEDs to sort of bump up the light levels. They used to hide in the caves or the hides sort of mid-afternoon, come potter about in the morning, potter about a bit in the afternoon. Now they are out all day. They are basking, they're moving around, they're running around, they're climbing up the little bushes, they're climbing up the rock faces, and it's incredible to watch because it's like seeing them in the wild. It really is. Where are we here? I don't know if you can see this picture very well. Some of you may recognise this setup. This is the desert iguana one I've just finished. This is the exact same picture with one difference. You probably can't see it very well. The LEDs are off on the top one. The LEDs are on the bottom one. How dull does this one look compared to this one? It looks much better on here, I promise you. I will be putting this PowerPoint up on the HerpHQ page, and I will share it to the Westminster page as well, so you can see it in a better resolution, shall we say. But even just the aesthetics to us, it looks so much better. So if it's good for us, it's good for them. What's the harm in including it? Really, really not. So this is now my typical light setup in my vivarium. Yes, there's a lot of lamps there. So I've got across the top, it's my T5 UV. That usually sits around the 7,000 range, so that's your colour temperature, going back to that chart. So that's the UV range, that's right up this end of that chart. Depending on the size of the animal, I have 1 or 2 basking spots. Although I don't like calling them spots, areas. I create an area of basking. So if the animal's bigger or I've got multiple animals in an enclosure, I will have more basking bowls grouped together to create a bigger area so they can all bask happily at the same time and they clambering on top of each other. They normally sit, I tend to use sort of the tungsten halogens, normally about the 2,700 to 3,000 range, so that's your much redder light down towards the bottom. And then across the top I have a string of LEDs, which again are a mixture. 2 at 6,000, which are these ones, and then after 2 at 4,000. So you can see there I have covered the full spectrum, from the very beginning of the infrared, all the way through the visible light spectrum, and then all the way through to the UV as well. So this one here is actually the 14% dragon lamp. No, it's not, it's the 12%, that's my active. So just by doing that, I don't know, just the activity levels I've seen from here, it's just shot through the roof. Microhabitats. Now, definition of a microhabitat. Google was my friend here. It's a small area with a different set of parameters to the general habitat of that animal. It can be anything from a difference in temperature, difference in humidity, a difference in substrate type, and different levels of light. Anything like that. So, I mean, even in a desert, you will find humid areas. Most reptiles, when they're going through shed, will seek out these humid areas to sort of help shed the skin. That's why we spray down our cages when the snake or the lizard are in the shed. That's why we create moss hides for certain geckos and ackies and other to help them shed. And that is a microclimate. It doesn't have to look pretty, it doesn't have to be. Microclimates are mostly functional, but they can be made to look pretty. Like this one. Most of you may have heard of rheostat. Generally speaking, it's sort of plywood boards, sort of stacked like that, at an angle with sort of beads at either end that sort of stack it up. And what that does is generally placed underneath the basking spot, and that creates different temperature zones as they go down. And the animal, in this case the ackies, can sort of pick and choose which sort of level of temperature they want to bask at. And I do with this one see my ackies throughout the day moving down. When they've cooled down, they go and forage, then they find something to eat. They go back and sit at the top, and they start the process again. They move down and they move down. As I said, typically plywood. I can do things natural and as complex as possible. I made mine out of slate. It took me about 4 hours to put that slate stack together without it moving at all. Didn't it, love? Very frustrated wife it was. And it's balanced perfectly. The only thing I will recommend with using stone, especially when it's stacked like that, especially with a species that like to dig, either start the stone on the very bottom underneath the substrate, or do what I did, and I actually used a stack of 4, sort of 2 and 2 house bricks, which sat in the substrate. Then I'm not burying my nice expensive slate into the soil. But do not just place it at the top of the soil. I've seen accidents, I've seen the results. It's not pretty when an nappy tail gets trapped because they've dug underneath. Not mine, thankfully, but I have seen it in the past. So this is actually sat on those house bricks. And the same applies to any rock, even if it's just a single rock. Either if it's a big rock, place it on the floor. If it's a small rock, put some underneath it. It doesn't need to be heavy to trap a lizard.
Are they fixed?
They're not fixed in any way. No,
but they're just really big, so they stay there.
Yeah, you can't really see the scale there, but I mean these sort of 2 middle ones here are probably about 1.5 foot across.
Right.
So they're probably about 1.5 foot square. Yeah, it's a fairly large. I mean, you could silicone them together. Silicone will hold it quite well. There's various other rock adhesives like masonry adhesives and stuff you could use that are completely inert. You have no chemicals. There are ones obviously that do, just make sure you pick the right one. So yes, you could quite happily stick them together. I haven't, because I spent hours and hours perfectly moving them millimetre by millimetre until they did not rock even a millimetre. So yeah, that was fun. But yeah, so this provides the vertical temperature gradient underneath. Caves, burrows, hives, we all use them. Do we know what we use them for? Do we know what their purpose is? They have lots of purposes. They can either create the cooler area, a darker area. They can create a more humid area if you stuffed it with moss. So there's your moss hives to aid with the shedding. Some animals naturally live in burrows. I keep coming back to the desert iguanas because I just love them. So this is a cave I created for them, which you've probably seen in the video if you've seen it. So this is a lift-off section. I can lift the whole thing off and I can get into it. Any of you know Dave Brown from West Midlands? Not West Midlands, we are West Midlands. West Yorkshire Herpetological Society. He's got a hognose enclosure, which is 5 foot, and he's got several hognoses that go up together. And he was very kind, he sent me some pictures. So, not the clearest of pictures, but you can see here where we've got the gaps underneath the rocks. And what he does is he purposely sprays that one particular area more than the rest of the enclosure. So that part of the enclosure he knows is going to be more humid than the rest of it. Leaf litter. Don't know how well the video is going to play. I use... That is my Aki, or one of my Akis. An Aki one. I use leaf litter in everything. I love it. It's absolutely great. You can buy it by the bag. You can get all sorts of different types of leaves. Can anybody here name me one habitat where you would find a reptile that you would not find leaf litter? Even the smallest part. The Antarctic doesn't count. Because you won't find a reptile there. I don't think you'll find one. Or you will struggle to find one. There's still some form of leaf litter, even if it's like needles from drop cactus, that is still leaf litter to some extent. Okay, it might be very minimalist compared to like a forest floor example, but every single habitat will have some kind of material on the floor. You won't find pure sand. Sand dunes may be a slight exception, but even there will be some areas within a sand dune. I mean, I'm not talking an area in the wild the size of a I'm talking an area in the wild that is the size of a habitat that these animals will grow. You will find some kind of leaf litter. Adding it to your vivariums, probably the main reason people add it, it creates a home for the custodians. You don't have to use custodians, you have to use the woodlice, springtails, whatever else you might want to use, but it creates a fantastic home for them. They can forage around, they eat the leaf litter, they clean up most of the stuff that gets left over from spot picking. But the great thing, as you can see from this video, it enables the animals to forage. I mean, the way I feed my Akis, I do not hand feed them at all. Well, I do actually, I hand feed them once a week, and that's it. Everything else, I'll take a handful of roaches, handful of crickets, handful of locusts, I'll mix it up, and I just throw them in, scatter it around, and they end up doing this. They will spend days foraging for every last roach. They hear a noise, they're on it, and they will find it, and they will track it down. You can literally sit in the viv, in front of the viv. I know it's big, but it's not that big. At any point in the day, and you can always guarantee one of the two of them will be foraging around in that leaf litter. And if they're not, they'll be on the basket as well. It's just great to see them active, it's great to see them moving around. We've kind of already covered the damp areas, but it's a slightly different context here in the way that this kind of microhabitat doesn't have to be something that you actually construct within the vivarium. So it doesn't have to be something you purposely made. It could just be something as simple as heavily spraying one certain part of a viv more than the others. By doing that, you've created a microhabitat. You've created an area that is damp, an area that is wet, and you can control how damp you make it because you are spraying it manually. So again, going back to Dave's enclosure, you can see how wet the rocks are here. So Dave's with his 5 foot, he has his basking spot bang in the middle. And what he's got then, he's got his dry end, his warm part, and this end of the viv, which is this one, he sprays every single day on the rocks directly. Not only does that increase the humidity of that end of the viv, it also creates a wet area, or they can go in and under the rocks as well with water seep down. And it just creates just an area for, obviously, his hognoses to actually go and aid to shed. And he says he can always notice when his snakes are ready to shed, because they move from that end, the dry end, or the basking spot, and they'll spend 10 times more time in the damper area. So it's amazing what we can create. So I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see these videos, but the next couple are some of my enclosures that I've got. So you've seen the Yaki one, but this is the whole thing. So that's the Rita stack that I was on about. You can see all the leaf litter I've got. You can see I've got cork tubes buried right down in the substrate. The substrate is almost a foot deep towards some parts, and the actual substrate is littered with tubes. So you can climb around. Got grasses in there, that creates your light and shade difference. You've got your tubes. Again, sorry, excuse the water bowl, Aki's love to dig, and I literally just changed it. And then you've got the rock crevices here, and obviously we've got the Rita stack that we had. The next one's a little different. The next one is my Herman's Tortoise enclosure. Now, yes, it's in a viv, please don't shout at me, but this viv is 2.6 metres wide, and it's 75 centimetres deep. The time I bought the tortoise, not have the tortoise, at the time I brought this unit, I did live in a flat, so I didn't have the option of having an outside space. The plan is eventually to build a large outdoor enclosure for the tortoise when the wife allows it. Soon? Soon? Yeah? Tomorrow? Yeah, okay. So this is a bit. Now, this grass that you see in here, the tortoise wasn't in it at this point. I was allowing the grass to grow through, and I actually wanted this grass to die off. Because they come from the Mediterranean, they don't live in wet grassy areas. This grass is actually from seed, and that's after 5 days. Which kind of shows you the power of having the correct lighting. There are 8 of these in that viv, along with 2 4-foot UV tubes. So the substrate itself is a mixture of mostly topsoil, with a little sand mixed in, and a little cocoa fibre just to help retain the actual moisture. There's also bits of pebbles, leaves, there's twigs, there's all sorts mixed into it to create just and he loves to dig. I don't know if you saw it, but there is actually a cave. So all this section under his basket spot here, there's actually a plywood box underneath. And just behind this grass, I'm not sure if I got it in the video or not, there is an entrance to the cave. He goes there every single night. The second the lights are back on, he's out. Walks around up on the basking spot. I can promise you now the viv looks nothing like that. He's completely trashed it. All the grasses are dead. Tortoises for you. He is a fully grown Herman, so he's a fair size. Yeah, I think you can't see the entrance on that. But yeah, that is basically the Herman's Tortoise enclosure. So that's the bottom one of the huge stack.
Have you sealed the vivarium itself? Yeah, is it just like a wooden vivarium?
That is a wooden viv, yeah.
But is it sealed with like a resin or a paint or something?
Nothing at all. Obviously the joints are silicone sealed, so you can probably just see the silicone bead that comes down here. The chap that built these for me is a chap from Leicester, the one I put you in touch with actually. Gives you the option of having these built and assembled and completely sealed for you. So he will silicone down the joint before he screws it together and then puts a bead down as well. Obviously with this being a 2.6 metre viv, this one came flat packed, so I had to do it myself. I hate silicone. There is absolutely no lining on that whatsoever. No. Basically anywhere where there would be any exposed chip balls, so where the varying boards end, or where the corners join or whatever, it's got a fairly thick silicone bead all the way around it. Hasn't let me down yet. This unit's about 18 months old now. I've not seen any warping, any sort of idea of ingress of water into it.
Do you water those plants that are in there now?
Every week. Every week. That viv gets sprayed every week. The Aki's viv gets sprayed every 2 to 3 days. Obviously the desert iguana viv gets sprayed maybe once every 2 weeks. In that size space? No. Personally, I wouldn't. Certainly not 2 males. Certainly not a male and a female. Because your female will get fed up. Promise you that. You could potentially put 2 females together, but I would have an outdoor enclosure for that, personally. I mean, you can do it. It depends on the species, depends on the temperament of the tortoises you're trying to keep. You have to judge it by case basis. But no, I've only got the one in there. His name is Ted.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, named by the wife, I promise. Because she actually had the tortoise before we met, so he's about 12? Something like that. Yeah, he's been happy doing it here now. And the reason I know there's no water damage to these Viv is because I had to disassemble them all about 4 months ago, when I moved from Essex to Worcester. And trying to move this huge stack was fun, wasn't it, Matt? Because you helped me put it back together again.
Anyway. In the 1980s, and it was at the time that they were just literally in the garden.
Yes.
They didn't have any of these fabulous enclosures.
No, and to be completely honest with you, the best place for a tortoise, in my opinion, depending on the species, is outdoors. If I have the space in the...
When they told us to put the tortoise down and hibernate, that's when Luke told me to do that. That's what I would do, but
Things change all the time. That's the one thing I love about this hobby. Something comes out new, there's always something new to learn, there's always something to improve. No.
In the 1980s.
You ready, Matt?
Nope.
So about 2.5 weeks ago, Matt sent me a challenge. He brought me this. He said, build me a Viv. I said, how much you paying? He said, nothing. He said, you can use it as a demo, but then I'll have it. So I actually finished this Viv about 3 o'clock this morning. After about 35, 40 hours of work that's gone into it. Now, look, for those of you who have seen my desert iguana video enclosure I've done, I have used the exact same method in this one, and I purposely did that because so many people have asked me how I did that one. There's one small difference in this, which I will explain. Matt hasn't seen this since he dropped his tank off, at all. Your wife has, but you haven't. So would you like to come and do the honours, Mike?
That's you.
Matt? You ready, Matt? You ready? Just pull off. Yep. There you go. How's that? I know how much you love him. I know how much you love him, and I know how much you love his hooks. So I had to put Mark's logo in there for you. So I hope you like it.
It's wonderful.
And I will go through a little bit of how I built it. And I'll walk you through it later. Anybody who wants to come up and talk to me about these bits, ask me any questions afterwards, I will do. But right now, I will take you through how I build some of these enclosures. Some of the materials I use, all of which I have here, they're readily available off the shelf at pretty much any hardware store. Apart from this stuff, I'll come on to that in a minute. Silicone, not in this one, but the backgrounds for your more tropical stuff for sticking your cocoa fibrons or tree fern, which I like to use. Old favourite, expanding foam. Don't get the fire retardant stuff. It's full of horribles. Use that. Instant grab adhesive. Make sure you get the one that says solvent free. This is the stuff I use to actually stick all the different components together, stick it to the glass and various other bits and bobs. This stuff is actually polystyrene, but not polystyrene as you know it. This is extruded polystyrene. The difference is the machining process and how it's produced. So it's not full of those horrible little balls that get all over your flat. Sorry, love. It took me a week to clean up, and we were still finding them 2 months later. Oh, sorry, you cleaned up. Yeah, sorry. But this stuff is so nice to carve. You can get so much detail out of it. There's only one problem with it. It is not cheap at all. It's probably about 10 to 15 times the price of normal polystyrene. Now you can use normal polystyrene. I do use it. There is some in this. There's some of this in it. You can also use Kingspan. Kingspan insulation boards. The stuff you can get from the loft. If you can try and find the stuff without that horrible foil, you need to peel off the sides, even better. But that seems to be non-existent now with all the new eco stuff that's coming in, which is this stuff here. Unfortunately, if you do use that stuff with the foil on it, you need to get all the foil off, otherwise nothing sticks to it. That's not a nice process because it doesn't peel off as easy as you think it would. I use standard PVA. I buy it at 5 litres, and that's the stuff that I use to stick all the stone on. Unfortunately, it takes about 3 or 4 layers. does take a lot of time, but I will cover that a bit later. Now this stuff here, in the bucket, is what you see covered in here. It is real crushed stone. And it was kind of having a chat with a chap called Dan Davis, who some of you may be familiar with, up from Scotland, who actually, I can't take credit for this method at all, it's his method. I've just perfected it. It's a product from a company called CED. They are a producer of natural stone. They can get hold of stone in any way, shape or form. This product is called Cedic footpath gravel. And it's the stuff they lay in the gravel and then go over with a compactor, and it creates a really hard, compact stuff. What I do with it is I sieve it. So this here is basically the powdered stone, and this here is all the slightly larger pieces in it. You don't have to. The desert iguana build that I did is naturally, but the great thing about it, you can buy it in 25 kilo bags, and I've still got a bag and a half left after doing this viv and the desert iguana viv. It's £3.90 a bag. Yes, £3.90 a bag, and it goes such a long way. It's really dusty, it's really messy, but the results it produces, you can't really argue with it. The best thing about it, because it's real stone, it feels like real stone. And I will invite you all up to come and have a look, have a feel, have a touch, do what you want to do of the viv. So how do I build it? So there are a million different methods to doing fake rock. I'm going to talk about the ones I've done. I'm also going to talk about some of the work that Francis does. Francis Cosquieri, thank you. I could never pronounce it. His work is stunning, and to be fair, he's kind of been a huge inspiration for some of the stuff I do. I would almost call him a bit of a mentor, to be fair. He's one of the nicest chaps I've ever met in this hobby, including Matt. Sorry. But yes, he's been a huge inspiration, and this is one of his builds here. And my stuff does not come up to parties. It just can't. But he paints it. So that one is painted, but then he's a bit of an artist, so he kind of does it. This one here is a slightly earlier stage of this one, and this one here is my desert iguana.
What paint can you use?
Sorry.
What paint can you use?
Paint. Any water-based acrylic paints I use. So this one here is all done with just very cheap hobbycraft acrylic and water-based paints. Nothing more than that. It didn't matter so much on this one because this one's been sealed with epoxy resin, so it's completely covered. But any water-based stuff, just try and avoid the solvent-type paints.
Do you cover it then?
It depends on the habitat. So obviously I've not used paints in this one, but I haven't covered the rock in anything because the rock is stuck with PVA. Once the PVA is dry, it's not waterproof, but it is fairly water resistant. You could spray that down, a light spray, but it's an arid setup, so you wouldn't do anything else. It wouldn't have any effect, to be fair. Francis actually uses spray paints in his, so this is all done with spray paint. I don't know how he does it. I've tried it and failed miserably, so I'll stick to this.
What's going on with living the
He has, I'm coming on to that, don't panic. So all these pictures that you see of this one here, Francis has very kindly agreed to let me use from a guide he wrote on Reptile Talk?
Yes.
Reptiletalk.net. I will post the link up. I'll either pop it on there because it is a phenomenal tutorial. That one? I have no idea, to be honest. Do you know?
Which one is it?
It's the one from the guide.
It could be a Diane's rat snake.
Yeah, what he said.
Yeah, it's
A
going to
Diane's rat snake?
Probably a Diane's rat snake.
Diane's rat snake of some kind.
Rat.
Rat snake.
Oh, okay.
So again, it's not my enclosure, so I can't comment too much on it. But he has allowed me to use some of the pictures and explain some of the methods that he's used. But I do urge you to go and check out his tutorial because it is, you can't go wrong with it, even though I've tried it. So how do I build it? The sculpt. So this stuff here is that same blue stuff that I showed you earlier. This is not blue. It's just a slightly thicker version. It's a 50mm instead of 25. What I generally tend to do, cut out a rough shape. Don't worry about carving the rock. Don't worry about making it look like a rock. Just create your bulk of what you want it to look like. So on this ledge here, this part here is made up of, I think, about 7 different layers of different sizes, and just to create sort of a rough look. And you see the time lapse here, which will be going on like Herpetolgical at some point. I time lapse the entire Herpetolgical build, the desert iguana build. So once I've got all the edges, I will put it up so you'll be able to see the process from start to finish. Well, this is basically just cutting out the rough shapes. I say, don't worry about making it look like a rock. Don't worry about any straight lines. Don't worry about anything, because that will solve later when you actually carve out the rock face. How far have I got along on that one? Has it gone back down a little bit yet? Oh, no. The actual sculpt. You can use a blade. I tend to use sort of a big bread knife type thing to get the rough shape, so to start carving the slopes and stuff, which is how I started with some of these ones. So that stack that you just saw me cut in there, it actually turned out to be this one here. This picture here is the start of Francis' one. So that nicely painted grey one you saw right at the beginning, that's that viv there.
What's his name again, sorry, Francis?
Francis Cosquieri.
I'll get you that if you want.
I'll pop it up on the page after. or Ricky can put it on the page. Are you writing it down? Or
I've got it up there.
Oh, you've got it there. Excellent. Yeah, so I'll get Ricky to put the link onto it on the rest of this page, so anybody can go and look at it. But yeah, so that's the start of that one. And although the final results are very different between what I've done, this method and the way Francis does it, the first few sort of steps, if you like, the sculpting, the covering, before you start to get to the final finish, is more or less identical. It's all about creating shapes, creating structure, covering it, and then you've got your final, either you paint it or you can go with sand. But he's used exactly the same stuff. The slightly orange stuff you see on the background is king sand. The white stuff you see there is just standard sort of packaging polystyrene, just a slightly thicker stuff. He loves it, I don't so much. I prefer the harder stuff that's easier to carve, or less messier to carve rather. And the black stuff you see in between is just expanding foam, just to fill the little gaps, which you can carve to shape afterwards. So that is his finished version before he started going on to the next step. So that's fully carved, ready to go.
But it's not fire retardant foam.
Not fire retardant foam. So fire retardant expanding foam contains a lot of chemicals to make it fire retardant. So it's certainly not advised to use that one. I mean, this, where is it? Here. This can here, it's Wicks. I'll let you have a look, feel free. It's just a multi-purpose sort of expanding foam. It's nothing special. To be fair, the less special it is, the less likely it is to have all the crap and the chemicals that make it special. So, the one bit of advice I would get, which is a mistake I did when I bolted over that stuff, buy the cans you can use multi-directional. Because those cans you can only use with the can upside down. So if you wanted to try and get into a nice tight little gap and you tip the can, you've suddenly got a load of air coming out, which then blows all the expanding foam back in your face. And you end up trying to get it out of your hair for how many weeks? 2 weeks, I think I was picking it out of my hair. Yeah, so they do the same version of that one, but it's got a ball valve in it and some clever magic. But it's exactly the same product, but you can use the can in any direction, and it makes your life a lot easier. So that's that. So this is me actually carving down the final rock structure. It doesn't need to be precise. There is no such thing as a perfect line in nature. Just literally, all I'm doing there, I'm literally sticking the blade in, flipping it out, and just literally just taking random chunks out of it until it eventually looks like rock, or how I want it to look. This one I did a little differently. I did it more of a smooth sandstone, whereas that one, because the desert iguanas from Arizona, Mexico, the rock's quite jagged and it's quite sharp in places. So you can see here, literally all I'm doing is just sticking the knife in and plucking it out. And it's just a standard Stanley knife. There's nothing special to it than that. I wish there was.
And you're sticking it together with PVA?
No, so that one I stick together using the instant grab adhesive. Just make sure you get the solvent-free one.
Do you cover it, or does it just stay blue?
It doesn't stay blue, no, it will be covered, and we'll come on to that next. For the desert iguana one, because I was a bit worried about the blue, I did actually paint all the blue foam in sort of a beigey colour, because I was a bit concerned I'd have to put 20 layers of stone on to get rid of the blue, and I didn't want blue coming through in the rock. I've never seen blue rocks in the desert. I'm sure there is somewhere. But yes, there is no special technique. There is no magic to make it happen. It is literally completely random. I don't plan it. Obviously,
You could have lied about that now.
I could have done, but the trouble is, I'm here to share my experience. I'm here to show people just how easy it can actually be. The biggest thing you need to do an enclosure like this, patience. That is it. Patience. Everything else, all the products are easily available. Just put some time aside. Just make sure you plan about 3 times longer than you tell the wife it's going to take. How long did the desert iguana viv take? 3 months? About 160 hours to build that desert iguana viv.
It's not just the Wi-Fi, Sam.
No, and Mike, who was very kindly looking after desert iguanas while I was building. Thank you for that, Mike. That was, yeah, I was hoping you weren't going to bring that one up. But yeah, so it did take me 3 months to make. I did originally tell the wife, it's fine, I'll get it done in a week. It probably didn't help, it took a bit longer because I was filming the whole entire process, so I was trying to make sure the lighting was correct to make sure I could actually film it. I'm about halfway through editing all the footage now to put through a thorough, full tutorial from the very start to the very finish. Exactly just how I do this, and I'll put it up on YouTube and I'll make sure I share it on the page. The only problem with this method is the mess. It makes a lot of mess. And unfortunately the Hoover doesn't pick it up because it's large chunks. So I made our front room like that every single night for about a month.
You need to buy tarpaulin.
That's a bloody good idea. Put it on the shopping list, or it's a bit late now, I've done it. The other problem I had is that for those who do follow the page, you've probably seen this stack of bibs. It's 2.1 metres tall, and the bottom one, that's the tortoise one, that's the ICUN one you saw, and the desert iguana one is up here, and it starts about there, and it goes to the ceiling. And it's 4 foot wide, 2.5 foot deep, 2.5 foot tall. So I had to do the entire build in the viv, stood on that. So that obviously added a lot of time to it as well. So one thing I can recommend is do your backgrounds if you're going to make them before you wire up the viv. And you can't move it or tip it on its back, because it makes it a lot easier. Because this only took, well, a lot less time to make. This only took a couple of weeks to make, about 30 odd hours. But I was able to take the lid off, I was able to put it on its back, put it on its side. Because there's PVA inside, it sticks a lot better when it's pushing that and not on the lid. So yeah, unfortunately, it does make a lot of mess. Now, this step is where the split happens between my process and Francis. If you're going to go down the painting route, you really want to be doing the PVA in tissue. No Mike, it is not paper mache. Okay? I know you'd love to call it paper mache. Pretty notes, it's not paper mache. It's PVA, and it's actually in this case just toilet paper. About 8 rolls of it. Individually taken off the squares and put through. If you're going to go for Francis's method and use the painting, the PVA in the tissue, when you put it on, if you dab it with a brush as well, actually creates a really nice rough, rocky effect. So when you use the spray paints and you come from up or down, or even if you dry brush in, like with the acrylic paints here, when you brush over it, you don't paint the whole thing, because it's not a flat, smooth surface. And you end up with the highlights and the darker patches, which I will show you a bit later on with that one. But you probably want about 4 or 5 coats, max, depending on sort of how humid the environment's going to be. I think Francis did 3 in this one. I can't remember. I don't know why I'm looking at you. Do you know? No. If you're going to go with this method, you don't have to, you can skip this step. I don't. I just put 1 layer on. And the reason I put 1 layer on is because I find you get a slightly better finish, because where you've got all the joins, where the bits all come together, you cover them. So that when you put the PVA stone on, you don't see all the little dents where you've got your layers stacked up together. So for the method like this, and this one here is actually this build, that pillar section over there on its back. So I did 1 layer just so then it becomes one piece basically. So when you then paint over, you don't get bits down in the gaps and little crevices and whatnot. Option 1, this is again nowhere with. So this is Francis's viv. I think he actually used 7 colours on this one. Probably the most important factor when it comes to painting, same applies to this one as well, which you will see later on. always give it an undercoat of black. Always give it an undercoat of black. And the reason being, I think we're in that other stream again, I'm just going to show you. If you don't do the undercoat of black, all the colours you put on the front go dull. And you don't get the vibrancy of the colours coming through. And it also allows you to pick out the deep crevices, so the bits where your paintbrush is never going to reach when you're going over it, you get the dark, and it's much darker, and it creates that depth in the rock, which you can see a bit closer in this one. Again, he's done this one with spray paints. Now the key with the spray paint is never spray it face on. Depending on the colour, what you're using, from above and from below, or from the sides to sides, that way you only pick off one side. So for example, on this one, you probably can't see it very well, he's got flecks of green running through this one, which is representing sort of algae build-up and stuff on the rocks. Obviously that only ever appears on the side of the rock facing the sun. So he just sprays it from above and from a fair distance, so that it's only sort of little particles that drop around. From that, it's kind of just a matter of just choosing the colours depending on what the rock type you want to build. I can't remember the name of the paints he uses, Montana.
Yes,
Yeah, so he uses Montana branded paint, spray paints. He's never had any issues with them, they're perfectly safe to use. Montana Gold, thank you, Ricky. What Montana Gold actually have, they have an app that you can download. And if you take a picture of a rock, it will tell you every colour that's in that rock, and then we'll give you the list of their paints that match it. And by using that, you can then use that list of paints. It's not 100% accurate, but it's not going to be far off. So if you go and take a walk in the woods, or you've got even a picture from Google, it's a decent picture that you could photograph the photo, if you know what I mean. It can pick out those colours relatively well. And then when it comes to painting, always start with the darker ones, and then every layer you do get lighter and lighter, both in colour and in sort of application. So the lighter the paint, the lighter the application. He then finishes it off with a sort of a dry brush of white, literally right on the very tips, and that just picks out the highlights. Again, that process you will actually see when I get to the point of that one. So here's the desert iguana build again. This is the one that took 3 months, because I don't like to do simple things. I like to make them as complex and as unreachable as possible. Don't ask. Pardon? I've got my trio of desert iguanas in there. Little deserts, about that big, black and white. So this is kind of an Arizona themed sort of village where they come from. It's very, very hot out there. The rocks can quite easily, at midday sun, reach temperatures of 70, 80, even sometimes 90 degrees centigrade. And the desert iguana is probably the only lizard in the area that you'll see out basking in that top. So I wanted to create a nice big rock on the left-hand side, which you can see here. And you can see how intense the basking spot is, and how large it is as well. That rock is about probably 1.5 foot by 1.5 foot on the top surface, and that basking area covers it all. Actually, the day after Ron did his talk last month, he actually popped into my this thermal image camera. Again, if you follow the HQ page, you might have seen the posts. I've shared some of the pictures. I didn't quite realise how hot it was, but they were still quite happily basking and carrying on. But at the same time, you also want to create areas of retreat. So you can see here, this is the cave we had earlier. Now this section here completely lifts off, and it's light as a feather because it's made from foam. You can't quite see it on this one, but the rock here is actually probably about a 6-inch burrow as well, and that rock just lifts off. It's just sitting on the top. This whole viv actually has a false bottom.
So you haven't used paint at all there?
Not on this one. I have to paint the blue stuff, just because I was worried about it showing through the rock. But I have not. There's no paint. No, everything, all this rock work you see on the side here is this stonework that you see here, just not sieved. So this has still got those bigger pieces in it.
So when they went to hide out, do they have to burrow underneath?
No, so you can see here there's 2 entrances. So this viv actually has a false floor. So there is foam all the way across. There's no loose substrate in this, apart from in this box, which is full of quite a moist, sandy sort of
You don't
nest
have to
box.
lift the lid up when they want to go to bed and put it back down.
Unfortunately not. Or fortunately not,
Doesn't
no.
actually
No, so, I mean, the only reason I would ever open that lid really is if I expect one of the females to be gravid, and they've gone, because the idea is that's full of moist sand, so that's where I'm hoping they will eventually breed next year, fingers crossed. And then this one under here is just literally like a square box. It's got no substrate in it. But they're both easily accessible if I need to. But they can get in and out as they see please, as they see fit through those holes there. Like, the burrows are kind of, there's a rodent that lives in Arizona called the kangaroo rat. Typically speaking, the desert iguanas basically utilise the kangaroo rat's burrows. So I use loads of pictures of kangaroo rat burrows, basically try and reproduce what the entrance would look like and stuff like that. So again, that was found that through the iNaturalist website, people were snapping them, because what they tend to do with basking, if they're not on the basking spot, they will cryptic bask with their head out of the burrow.
Looks like a nice home.
Yeah, I should hope so. I hope they appreciate it. I've put enough effort into it. So yeah, so basically with this method, I've actually used about 3 layers of PVA. It is very time consuming, I won't lie. It is incredibly dusty, it's incredibly messy, but I think the results speak for themselves with what you get at the end of it. Yeah, so basically, it's just a matter of, I don't think I put a video in that one, I didn't know. It's literally just a matter of just painting the PVA on. I forgot to mention, when I do the PVA in tissue layer, I tend to use a 50-50 mix of PVA water mixed up. When I do the stone, I just use the pure PVA. I think there's about 15 litres of PVA in this building. So in context. Sorry.
When you say 3 layers of PVA, is it like PVA, then the stone sprinkled on top, then
Yeah.
another PVA and
Yeah,
stone?
I was just getting to that bit, yeah, so it's basically...
Rather than 3 layers of
Yeah.
PVA?
No,
then
so you
just one layer
paint
of
on the
stone
PVA and you literally take handfuls of this really dusty stuff and you just go... And obviously I was doing this in the front room. My wife wasn't best pleased because the front room was very dusty for about a month. And it actually kills hoovers. Sorry. So yeah, again, it produces great results, but it's incredibly time consuming. It is incredibly easy to do. You just need patience and time and a very patient wife.
And it's so nice for the animals to have the environment that they're used to. And
I mean, that's what I strive for. I mean, just 2-3 years ago, I would never even imagine of keeping my animals like this. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I used to keep a bearded dragon on lino. I used to keep my leopard gecko on tiles. We've all done it at some point, but we all learn, we all progress, and I take huge pleasure and privilege in creating environments like this for my animals. And
it's like a mansion.
It is for them.
It's like a couch.
Trouble is, I've got not much space left because I've got these huge tanks everywhere. But yeah, so basically just you paint on the PVA, launch on the stone, let it dry for about 24 hours, and then the really dusty part, get a really soft brush, something like a dustpan brush, but a softer one, and literally just brush over everything to get all the loose stuff off. And then go and buy yourself a really, really, really cheap Hoover. Cheap is the key word there. Don't buy a 90 quid Hoover and then break it in a week. Then you have to go and buy another one. Because it will clog up the filter. That's fine, I'll finish it. So basically, with the brush and the dustpan, just try and get as much of the excess out as you can with your hands, because it will block up the filter in the Hoover and you're constantly taking it out and trying to clean it out. But you do need to get as much of the dust out between layers as you can, otherwise the PVA just peels on the next one. So basically, once you've done that, literally it's like the same process again. Just paint the PVA over the rock, throw it on. Obviously the PVA dries completely, it has to be clear. On the first coat, do not expect to cover it completely. You will see patches, you will see gaps. Yes.
Approximate drying times between coats?
Depends on the ambient temperature. The warmer it is, the quicker. Yeah, I mean the warmer it is, the quicker it will dry. Basically, I mean,
Are we talking hours or are we talking overnight? Realistically.
the fact that you've got to brush it off afterwards, after each layer, I would allow it to completely and actually dry. So to be safe, I would say 24 hours.
Okay.
I left most of mine about, I mean the way I didn't do all this at once. You need to throw the sand on when the PVA is relatively freshly applied, so I couldn't paint the whole thing and then spread, because by the time I've painted the whole lot, the first lot of PVA is dry. So I kind of did it inside, back. So by the time I'd done the whole lot, the first one was dry again. So I basically just did that cycle around. It took me about 3 weeks to do that one, the whole lot. The hardest part is doing the bits underneath. That's when all the dust and stone goes in your face when you go like that and you miss the ledge and you throw it in your face. I'm sure my wife's got a video of that somewhere. I'm sure it'll be on you being framed at some point. Yeah, it gets right up your nose, the dust. So I thoroughly recommend a dust mask. I didn't buy one of them either.
When you're talking about crushed stone,
Yeah.
obviously you're buying it. Is it like in a gravel or a chipping? You're buying it in?
I've got some here actually, so I can show you after, but it's literally in a 25 kilo poly bag, and it's a mixture of sort of 0 mil basic dust through to about 4 or 5 mil.
So you're sieving it down. But is there a particular method you found which is best for actually breaking it down further?
Sledgehammer, I do it. Yeah. No, you joke, but Dan Davis, the guy who sort of taught me this method, he didn't, obviously he's a landscaper by trade, so he's got rocks lying around all over the place, so he can create some fantastic colours with his rocks. These guys, the CED stone guys, actually do this in 3 colours. They do it in a nice Arizona kind of red, they do it in this sandstone, and they also do what they call silver, more of a grey rock, so you've got a good choice of products. But what he actually did, he actually took whole rock, and he manually crushed all these rocks with a sledgehammer and then a smaller hammer, and then eventually was using it like a flat bed, sort of bit of iron, and would literally just grind it. And he spent, I think he said 5 months grinding down all this rock slowly before he did his build. But he's a landscaper, so he's got access to the tools and stuff. I mean, you can buy relatively cheap rock crushers, they just don't tend to crush it that small. I would have thought. But yeah, so you can do it yourself with a hammer. It will take a very long time. I mean, this build here, I didn't sieve it, so I've left the larger pieces in it. This one, again, is exactly the same method as that, but I've sieved all the larger stuff out of this one. So the biggest piece in this is probably 1 to 2 mil, whereas anything in there is up to 6, so I've sieved it out. Okay.
I was just going to add to that if you do go down to like Hughes Gray or somewhere like that, and you can literally ask for like 6 mil to dust with grano, and typically I wouldn't have said you need to break it down anymore. It's almost like talc in the bag when you let it. When you
Yeah, I mean,
out,
I've got some of the stuff here that's actually sieved, and I've got some of the stuff that isn't sieved. The only thing you can do, I mean, I didn't do on this one, but I did on this one, is I added a little bit of topsoil, as dry as I could possibly make it, and I mixed it in. It just kind of creates that bit more of a speckled effect on the rock, so it's not just yellow or sort of golden. You can add and take parts away. I've known people who've used this method, but I've added a little bit of cocoa fibre, just sort of like, you know, the really dry ground stuff that you can get, and they just ground it up to literally a powder and put it in. You could mix a bit of sand in it, you could mix anything you want to create the kind of texture or the look or the colour that you want to achieve. And yeah, I mean, the results kind of speak for themselves, really. So that's it on this build. The only other little things I haven't mentioned, and I haven't got any slides on, you may notice these little sort of bushes that I've made. And they're all made from these, which you can buy for about $3.50 a bunch. I might be quoting Taryn's prices wrong there. And it's just birch branches. It's just the end of a birch tree. And it's all fine, you can cut it up. And I've literally just made the ends as clean as possible. Plonk them in. Obviously this one has actually got a false floor, so I've literally put a hole in it, I've sealed and glued it in. And then these are quite bendy, so you can actually bend them out. It's probably just the photo, no, but I mean, those ones there are literally a bunch exactly like that. They go grey over time. No, they're completely natural. I don't touch them. They do, as birch naturally does, they will grey over time. So these are sort of fresh cut and then dried. But yeah, it's a Taryn.
You can buy traditional broomsticks, which you could probably disassemble, without wanting to get thrown out of business and reverse engineer them.
I believe Taryn's option if you want to.
Is it?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Taryn's probably
No, it's fine. I encourage it.
But no, as with every single technique I've discussed here, there are multiple ways of doing it. The ways I'm doing it is not the right way, it's not the wrong way. There are many different methods of achieving exactly the same goal. The other thing I do, as you may notice in here, and you can see some of them down here, you can see the little dry grass tufts. That is actual grass. Literally, I take various ends, depending on how big I want the bunch. I take the end, I literally tie it with a bit of cotton thread, wrap, so you create a really tight sort of plug at the end of it as such. A few dabs of super glue on the end, let that dry, and you have your perfect little grass tuff, which you can see in here. And then just poke a little hole wherever you want to put it, pop it in, and because it's quite rough, and if you make the hole pretty much the same size, then you end up with sort of a really tight fit. And if they die off, and I mean, they are technically still alive, they're just dried. So they will eventually completely wilt and rot off. If you don't glue them in, pop them out, pop a new one in, and it's easier to buy. And it's just little things like that that can really, it's really sort of set a bit off. And you haven't just got plain rock everywhere, you haven't just got this, that and the other. The other great thing, as I mentioned, it feels like rock, but it also looks like rock. And because it's a PVA combined with stone, it's actually incredibly, incredibly durable. And it will last for years and years and years, I hope.
The question has got to be the weight saving as well. When you look at that sack of variants you've got, what it would weigh if you use
that was the other problem. That was kind of the other reason why I went with using this method. I mean, this viv starts at about 4.5 foot, and it's 2.5 foot tall. So the bottom of the plinth is literally my chin height. So it's perfect viewing. But when I had this set up before I moved, I had shed loads of rock in there, and I had all sorts of problems with glass doors and stuff. I mean, I probably had, I dread to think how many kilos of rock up there to try and create that in real rock. And I mean, the bow's recovered itself since I've removed it, and I've kind of wedged it back up, and it's all sorted itself out. But yeah, I had no choice but to come up with a lightweight method. Obviously, these guys live in rocky, arid areas. I wanted rock. So, believe it or not, I don't know who will believe this. This is my first ever build. That's the first ever rock build I've done. That's the second.
The second one's better.
Kind of joint first. You know what? No, Matt. No, I completely agree with you. I actually prefer this one to the one that I built for my own animals. And I think the difference is the fact that I sieved the rock.
So, it's the MP hooks that goes.
I know. I mean, look at the orange, the MP.
Sensitive.
That's permanent, by the way, Matt.
It's going to stay there.
I couldn't resist. Come on. Yeah. So, is anybody? Before I move on, I'm going to talk about how I built the stream in this one. But before I do, I'm talking about this one next. I promise. But is there any more questions on the cross rock before I move on? I mean, you're welcome to come up and have a look. And
with regards to the I'm going to say non-papier-mâché method.
Good man.
Okay. The toilet paper that you're using, do you dip that in? Do you paint the glue on and then put the paper on, or what's the method with that?
No, so it's literally a matter of you've got your foam surface,
yeah.
You've got your 50-50 mix. It is going to be runny, so expect it to run down. Don't worry about it. It dries clear, and if it goes onto glass or wood, it's fairly easy to sort of scrape off afterwards. And then basically just put the tissue on, and then with a wet brush, basically just dab. Don't swipe, because if you swipe your face, you just completely disintegrate the tissue. You can do it with kitchen roll and stuff as well, but kitchen roll costs a lot more than toilet paper in terms of how much you need for it. Not a lot more, but it also has that horrible patent effect. So when you're using toilet paper, go down to your local supermarket and buy the value stuff. Don't buy the stuff with all the little koala bears on it, otherwise you'll end up with rock brick with koala bears all over it. If you're painting it. If you're using the rock brick, it's not so bad, but if you're going to paint it, you'll end up with lovely dry brushed koala bears or little hearts or whatever. So just find the plainest toilet paper you can and literally just dab over it so it sticks, and then once it's stuck, then you can brush it a bit. But try not to be too rough, because you can just rip the tissue paper apart. If it rips and scuffs up a bit, so what? It's just extra texture. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, I've lost track of how frustrated I got with that build. That's probably the most frustrating stage, is the tissue paper. So if you're using that method, you can skip it. And I wish I had. Okay, right, we'll go on to the stream build. So that stream you see in there started life like that. 4 blocks of polystyrene, and that is actually polystyrene, and that's the one that created the mess in the flat. It took my wife 2 weeks to clean up, because I used a Dremel on it. That made a lot of mess. Don't use Dremel on polystyrene, please. Not without a mask and some kind of extraction method that takes it far, far away. So it started life like that. And then basically just, again, same process again with the rock work, create your basic shape. And then basically what I did is I built up the edges where the actual rocks poke up. It's just expanding foam. So I basically just put expanding foam down 2 sides to create a channel for the river. And then I carved it. So that's the final shape, with obviously the bit of wood in the back, which is kind of fused into the expanding foam. And then we painted it. which is the fun bit. No, we didn't. We grouted it first. So that you can use normal sort of tile grout. Just you don't use any of the stuff that's got any antifungal or antibacterial. Just use cheap. You can get browns, greys, blacks. Depends what kind of rock type you're trying to actually achieve. So this is actually a product called Rockoflex, which is produced by a company in Germany called the Pet Factory. Some of you may be aware. I think ProRep are now selling it, rebranded as them as well. And it is effectively just grout. It's just branded for the reptile industry. I saw it and got all excited and then realised I could have just used normal grout, which costs 4 times less. It's not a cheap product, but it is effectively just grout. So I basically just put 2 layers of grout over the entire thing, and then I painted it all black. It's very dark and dingy there. But obviously this is where the dry brushing technique comes in. And I wish people, when I first put this one on Herpetolgical I put these photos on about earlier in the year, I can't remember when. The amount of people who said, you must be an absolute artist to dry brush like that. And again, I promise you not, this is the first dry brush I did on this tank. It's really not that difficult, and it's actually really quick and really easy to do. You don't need quite as much patience for this method. It's literally just a matter of laying up the textures. Again, I had a lot of input from Francis, who is a genius when it comes to this. And then you just basically just build up the colours. So I don't know how well you can pick it up, but this is basically a grey. It's quite a dark brown. Dropped a bit of black into the grey and mixed it up, just to sort of break up the black a bit. And then we went for a lighter grey, and it's starting to look a bit more like the finished product. And then finally you end up using a bit of beige and then a little bit of white to just pick up the very tops. Now the reason this is quite so textured is because I used a Dremel on it, and I used a wire brush on a Dremel, so it made the expanding foam surface really, really sort of spiky and sort of lots of nooks and crannies, and that's great for dry brushing. Dry brushing on a completely flat, smooth surface does not work, I promise you, I tried it. And that's obviously the finished product, which obviously is here behind me. And that's it from me. So has anybody got any questions? You're welcome to come up, have a look at the vids. I've got loads of the stuff that I use. I've got some demos and stuff behind me about how I create drainage layers and stuff. So
So the tree thing is like
Is that the pond? Is that where the pond is?
in here,
Yeah.
open to
oh, the tree opens up. Yeah. So in this build here, I haven't mentioned because it was a vein in my life. Behind this tree section is actually an empty void. I've actually built a custom-built 3-chamber acrylic filter
I didn't know
from scratch.
living in there that opens the door.
No, there's nothing in there. So basically, it's just a little hatch. Hang on. Like that. So I can access the pump without having to rip the whole thing apart.
Sorry.
So I can get to the pump. You can see the filter in there. Now the filter's open at the top, and it's basically got 3 chambers that goes up
So
and
it's
down.
not the bathroom.
It's not the bathroom, no. Well, technically it is because it filters it, but yeah. Any other questions?
What's, how, in terms of maintenance, I mean, I know you try to have like bioactive testing so it maintains itself. What do you have to make sure is removable for maintenance reasons?
Basically anything that's hard to access. So if you're creating any, I mean this tank here, you probably can't see. There is a little window here, Matt, which you haven't seen, which is actually a peephole for the cave. And if I lift this section up here, you can get into the cave. So I've got full access to that cave to clean it, get any sick animal out that might be in there that you can't get, because the opening to the cave itself is tiny. Because I mean, the animal plant here is sand geckos. Sand geckos are going in here, so they obviously need 10 centimetre little geckos, so they've only got a small entrance hole, so they feel secure. But by creating a removable lid like this, which is not difficult to do, you literally create the whole structure. Once you've built it, before you put the sand on it, literally just cut out a section, and then you've got the exact size lid.
And you decorate that separately and then put it in, but make sure
Absolutely, yeah. The only thing I don't do is I don't cover the sides with sand.
Yeah.
Don't drop them off. I did this one this morning actually. That's what I finished at 3 o'clock this morning because I forgot about it.
Yeah.
It was still sat in the office. I was like, something missed. Yeah. But yeah, so I just paint the sides in a rough colour to match the sand. So you won't see it when it's in the bin, but I'm a perfectionist, so I like everything to look as good as I can. So yeah, that's anything that is any burrows or anything that is difficult to get to.
Because like I know you said like the branches, will wilt eventually or will break off. So you can just pull them out, put
Yeah.
new ones back in.
Yeah, all the grasses and branches in this one are just pushed in. They're
Yeah.
not stuck at all in any way, shape or form. Obviously you can't put the branches and stuff like this just loose in the substrate, because I mean there's loose substrate in this one.
Yeah,
They just won't, so they're actually stuck into the foam rockwork. And that's it. Simple as that.
Where you were doing your rock carving,
Yep.
making all that mess on the floor earlier,
Yeah.
have you tried taking that product, the loose, the waste, have you tried incorporating that back into a build yet?
I have,
In
and I
terms of
did.
recycling materials?
So, let's see if I can get it back. Bear with me. Alright. So actually, all these little nooks and crannies, and because the back of this viv was board, was that blue stuff, the board's a bit lined. So where I hadn't built purpose rockwork, all those offcuts, I basically covered the back one PV and stuck them on, broke up the flat surface, and but yeah, absolutely, you can use them. You could break them down. You can use them to add little bits of texture. You can, I mean, like this little, there's a little extra bit I've added on there. That's one of the offcuts. I just carved off a bit more smooth and stuck it on. It all gets covered. It doesn't matter how rough it looks at that stage because it'll all get covered over. Yeah. So all those offcuts are all like these bits up here, even this large piece here, and some of the bits. So when you see the proper resolution pictures of these, you'll see them a bit better. But yeah, that is using all of the offcuts. And they're all, I've got them all saved up in a tub, a very big tub now. Any more?
What's sort of rough cost? This sort of thing.
Do you have to answer with the wife in the room?
Sure, for me it's free, mate.
Yeah, so in fairness, Matt covered the materials on this one and that's it, and actually he's 30 quid short. But I haven't told him that yet. It depends on the products you use. I mean, that desert guana viv, I mean, forget about all the electrics and stuff. To completely kit that out with the crushed stone, all the PVA, all the expanding foam, the blue foam that I used, as well as this stuff is not cheap. It's about 70 quid. So I've probably about a £200 build. Easily, that one. She does now. I think I told her it was 100, but I'm not sure. But yeah, that was probably about a £200 build. But saying that, all the leftovers from that one, I've used in that one. So I've not bought all the foam stuff in that. I've not bought. I bought a little bit of Kingspan because I needed a little bit extra, which cost me like 6 quid. But all the foam that's in this one is leftovers that I had from that. But I've used all 70 quid's worth of foam in between the two builds. So yeah, probably about. I think you're probably looking at total about 250, 300 quid for the two. Obviously I wouldn't charge that if I was building one for somebody, it'd be about triple that at least. The amount of time that goes into them. But yeah, but it's worth it as far as I'm concerned. Any more?
Yeah, just a quick one. You mentioned the patience thing, which some of us may have more than others. Okay.
My wife has lots of it.
Something I'm just trying to envisage, a key learning from what you've been talking about, but a quick cut to the chase thing. Exoterra backgrounds are out there, they're cheap. Okay, it's not extruded polystyrene, but say somebody wanted to, a lot of people are very inspired about what you've been talking about, but they'll go away, buy stuff, make a mess, get wound up, dump it, never touch it again. Okay?
Absolutely. I've done many like that.
But I mean, obviously, getting a perfect fit to an Exoterra, which worked really well. If you were to take a standard Exoterra background, which I appreciate isn't extruded polystyrene, if you wanted to treat that with a paint and stone mix, what would you do? Just in terms of getting the accuracy, cutting a few hours of film.
There's nothing wrong with using normal polystyrene. I've used some normal polystyrene in that build. I used a little bit in that build as more back filler rather than the front edge I'm carving. The reason I don't use it is because you can't get quite as fine edge on it as you do with some of the other stuff. But there's nothing wrong with those Exoterra backgrounds as a starting point. You can carve a bit more out, you can make it a bit more jagged. You could even leave it exactly as it is and just paint it in PVA and stone if you want. And you'll have yourself a removable background that looks like that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that at all.
I was just thinking about getting the effect, losing a few. Obviously, it's not going to be as in depth as that, but as a starting point for somebody who wanted to do this without so much saving a few man hours, not getting demotivated by the build, just by starting with a basic background, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, even with the backgrounds, you can, if you had the exo, background for this one, for example. You could, you could just add even just a small bit of polystyrene and just an extra rock that comes off, or even a little pillar and ledge like that I've done there. It wouldn't be too difficult to do. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes.
Fun fact on that one, I know that Francis has done multiple backgrounds, just starting with the Exoterra background.
I was just thinking they're cheap, cheerful, you pick them up all over the place.
Francis
It's
has
a way of
improved
making
it.
over.
Yeah.
You know, the internet is awash with cheap Exoterras.
Absolutely.
Probably shouldn't tell people that. But it's a hell of a way of getting a cheap build looking really completely cool.
And it's a good way to learn. It's a good way to start, that you're not going to spend tens and tens, or hundreds of pounds on all these products and then get frustrated with it, as you said, and throw it out. You do need patience to do a build this complex. And I've learned to use a lot of it. That's for sure, that's for sure. Cheers. Anybody else?